Hello, everyone. This is Paul Bertorelli reporting for AVweb. With me is Jack Pelton, and this is, I guess you could call it, a part of our continuing series in which I ask Jack Pelton impossible questions. Jack, before we discuss what I really want to talk about, which is advanced AirVenture planning, yesterday Chuck Yeager died. He was quite a presence at AirVenture and in Young Eagles. And I'm sure you knew him and have a reaction to his passing.
Yeah, it kind of stunned me because sometimes you think some of our heroes are invincible and are going to live forever, but Chuck was an amazing man, with what he had accomplished in aviation. But from an EAA perspective, he was our second chairman behind Cliff Robertson in 1994 for our Young Eagles program, and he jumped in and took the mantle of promoting flying for young kids with the understanding that by 2003 we had a goal to hit 1 million Young Eagles, which was the centennial flight year. And he personally flew 250 young kids, did a phenomenal job, and did the ceremonial flight for the 1 millionth Young Eagle in the beginning of '04 with a young man out of Illinois, and then handed the reins over to Harrison Ford, which Chuck thought it was the appropriate time to just kind of step off the stage. But he was a lifetime EA member. He spent 30 years coming to Oshkosh. Was just a fantastic guy and really walked the talk on the Young Eagle program. So we were forever will miss him, and we're forever thankful for the legacy he's left with the Young Eagle program.
Yeah, he really did his part there, and I think we just took it for granted. We didn't necessarily cover it all the time, but he was involved. He was a steady presence.
He certainly was.
All right, we'll transition to what I want to talk about. We saw some news reporting this week that says public health authorities, specifically Dr. Fauci, has said that it may be late summer or even late 2021 before it's practically safe to have people in large venues, large crowds. He was thinking of sporting events and trade shows, I assume. So you've been watching this carefully. I know you have. We've talked one other time about it. What are your impressions at this point, and what kind of contingencies are in place?
Well, Paul, we're getting up every day, and first thing we do from a staff standpoint is talk about where's COVID today and what new information do we have and where do we think it's going. Well, I'll tell you, it seems like it's been a lifetime of doing this. It's getting old. It's really getting old quick. I have read and followed Dr. Fauci's latest comments, and he was talking a lot about indoor venues also, like the NBA, basketball, baseball games, the football stadiums. So we're dissecting that, and we have worked with some of the NFL football teams, in particular the Green Bay Packers, on the protocols that they are looking at. And we feel it's going to be a high wire act up till July again, like it was last year. So we think that a couple things need to happen. We got to get the curve at least turned in the correct direction in the coming months, because even with a vaccine, if you still are having these enormous numbers of positives and deaths, that's not going to bode well for a July event. We get that turned over and they stay on track for getting the vaccine rolled out next year, which they're talking I think the best case, or the case that they're trying to promote, is that there'd be a possibility that a majority of Americans could be vaccinated by the June timeframe. That AirVenture would look pretty good from being more a normal AirVenture. What we're doing today from a planning standpoint is assuming it won't be normal. We're assuming there's going to be smaller crowds. We're looking venue by venue in what we think we cannot do to be as safe as we can be. So things like theater in the woods, we'll continue to look at distancing. We're looking at masks. We're looking at taking exhibitors out of the exhibit hangars and put them in outside exhibits. Just certain parts on the grounds where there's congestion and gathering, we're trying to look at ways to either minimize the crowds or do away with those particular venues. I know so much of this always gets dependent on people's personal behavior and are they going to follow suit and do those prudent things or not. And so it's going to be I think you and I will be having this conversation every 4 weeks at probably at a minimum. As we kind of
what do you think? What do you think the drop dead date is on decision making on that kind of event?
to have the event period, whether it period go, no go, that decision needs to happen in the beginning of May timeframe. So rolling into May like we did last year, because then after the beginning of May, first 1 or 2 weeks of May, you start writing pretty big checks for hard costs that you can't recover. So we'll be looking prior to May as to how is our volunteer population responding and commenting on whether they will participate, because without them, we can't have an event. We'll be looking at how are the members responding as far as pre-purchase of tickets. We'll be looking at our exhibitors as to how are they holding up on whether they want to participate or not. And currently from just if you think the likely cases that you can have it from an assumption standpoint, we're planning for it to be down 30%, more of a 2008 kind of level. And then again, as I mentioned, we actually are in a day-to-day process of looking at venue by venue. What precautions would you take from a sanitization, disinfecting? We're working with 2 of the nation's leaders in those protocols. We have not selected the direction we're going to go with them, but they are the global leaders in sanitization and disinfecting as to what their recommendations would be and how could they actually be deployed on site to help us with that, and then what the recommendations would be for the different protocols. Personally, I think as we ride through the December and probably mid-January timeframe, getting through the holidays, we're in a pretty big wait and see as to what will happen at the local levels with local mandates. We know the federal mandates aren't occurring like they were in the past. And I think the incoming administration is saying that they're looking at recommending masks for the first 90 days of the administration, but beyond that, we don't have a lot of guidance.
Go ahead.
Locally in Oshkosh, there has been limitations on restaurant sizes and encouraging people to wear masks, but not hardcore mandates. But we'll be looking closely at all of that.
What do you think the practical minimum size is?
Ooh, actually, Paul, the practical minimum size is really just having a fly-in, where you're looking at just on the ramp, north 40, south 40, spread out, none of the exhibit kind of areas. That would be what the smallest size you could possibly bring it down to and still have it.
And that's a natural place to ask this question. You attended the event in Sonophone over the weekend briefly. Today is December 8th. What was your impression of that? And did it give you confidence that you can do this sort of thing?
I went in with probably the wrong expectations that this was Sun and Fun having a fly-in exhibit. They were talking about all the camping that was going to go on and the air show and all of that. And at the end of the day, it really turned out to be more of their test on what was the local population's acceptance of going to a large public event. And it was a half car show. So it was pretty much, well, it was Friday and Saturday. It was pretty much a Saturday event, drive in, drive out kind of traffic, very local, 2,000 people. I thought there was still, my read of the people there, when you look at what it could have been, was still a lot of people were very cautious, very concerned. Half the group wearing masks, half, I think, kind of indicative of nobody's really feeling comfortable right now being in a large outdoor event.
Yeah, well, that may be a good thing. If people are more careful than careless, then maybe it makes a difference in transmission.
It certainly would. I mean, but we certainly hope it will, and we've got to see some kind of improvement coming into the new year.
What's going on at EAA as far as museums and any kind of activities and the staff? Are you working virtual, or what's the status at the moment?
We came back into the offices in August, and as you know, at the end of this year, we've been having quite a problem in the state of Wisconsin and in Oshkosh in general with high numbers of positive tests. We have strong office protocols on temperature testing coming into the office. Masks are required. If you have any symptoms or you feel sick, quarantine for 14 days. We're very pleased to say, or be pleased to be able to talk about we have had no cases within the office that were tracked and traced to happening at work. We've had a few cases of employees that have gotten it, but it has been tracked and traced to external activities, which is something you really can't, you can't keep control under, but it has not been a problem as it may have been in some of the businesses in Oshkosh, like Oshkosh Truck is having large numbers, but they're high touch employees in the assembly areas that are doing things. So we're still producing magazines. We're still putting out more virtual activity with webinars. We're actually going to start doing sporting workshops virtually. We had our first cut at what we call Spirit of Aviation Week, and in January we're going to have Home Builders Week, where it'll be all virtual educational programs for a week-long online program. Our museum is open. We are not allowing large school groups to come. We're not doing overnight events. Our high-touch areas, like our AirVenture pieces of the museum, are shut down, just so that we can not have to, from a sanitization standpoint, stay on top of it. End of summer, the crowds were kind of typical families wandering through the museum. It's now we're into the winter season. It's slowed down significantly. We don't see having any major events at the museum through the first quarter. We have Christmas in the Air usually, which is a big community event, draws 4,000 or 5,000 people. We have early or March, April timeframe, Hops and Props, which is another big multi-thousand event. We are not going to host anything like that.
What is your impression of the general sentiment among the membership? Are they chomping at the bit to get this thing going? Are they feeling that you're being too cautious?
No, most all of them are saying what they said last year, which is kind of gives you take pause when I say what they said last year. Yet we didn't have it last year, which is, if you have it, we will come. And that's easy to say when you're sitting at home now in December or January or February, before you have to really get down to making that decision. Am I willing to go to the event come July? So everybody we've been talking to, a lot of the virtual events we do, will be saying, we're really looking forward to it. Missing it 1 year was really difficult and tough. We want to get back there. But I think when it comes to decision time, a lot of it will be personal choice. And we do believe that it'll be a 50-50 coin toss on how people make that decision. There's some people, as you know, as you've been out in the communities, as far as they aren't wearing masks, it'd be damned with everything. We're going to continue life as normal. And others who are more concerned, taking adequate precautions and following the guidelines, and it's kind of 50-50 there. So how you translate that into who's willing to show up and who isn't, it's hard to say.
Well, I'm glad it's you has to deal with this and not me. And I'll mark it on the calendar here for our next conversation in a couple months. We may or may not know more, or it may be more confusing than it is now. I'm afraid it's just a really difficult situation to try to suss out.
It is, and we're going to look at some of the key events between now and that May timeframe, which would be Major League Baseball. We'll see what the NBA does as far as people attending events. They're still supposed to have the AEA electronics conference going on. We did see the Paris Air Show in June has been canceled. I think the Paris, so much of that was, international travel is just shut down. They're talking about not being able to travel unless you had a COVID vaccine. They have a whole different, I think, set of issues than what we're dealing with. But we'll be keeping a close eye into that first quarter as to how are the behaviors and event patterns looking like.
All right, Jack. Well, I appreciate the update. And as I say, I'll mark it on the calendar for Chapter 3 of Ask Jack Pelton Impossible Questions, and we'll figure out where to go from there.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate the check-in.
This is Paul Bertorelli reporting for AVweb. We've been speaking with Jack Pelton of EAA. Thanks for watching.